Good morning. Hemshech Ayin Beis, volume 3. We're on the top of page 1384. Discussing how the process of the Seifrim, the scribes, or the inscribers, if you wish, the authors, who both, like Moshe Rabbeinu, wrote down the Torah word for word as it was said, but did so with the awareness, like he said, he knew that in transmitting these exact letters from the depth of Chochma of the divine higher wisdom. So that's why every letter is so precise. So too the Seifrim that study the Torah and delve into it with their effort and what he called with their Yigiyah b'Torah, va'ikar b'Mesiras Nefesh, with Mesiras Nefesh, leida amitis HaTorah, to know and come to the truth of Torah. So they too are accessing Sheirish Umokah the Chochma Elah. Like he said, it's interdependent. Just as the one who knows how to be mitzamtzim, take that higher wisdom and conceal it and hide it within the words, so too someone can come then and draw it out of those words. But that requires a special effort and a special yigiyah and a special mesiras nefesh. And that's what the Talmidei Chachamim do, to the point of getting out all the details, whether it's in Tefillin or Tzitzis or Shabbos. The example he gave from Eila Hadvarim, how we learn from those words, the 39 malachas, from Eila, from Dvarim, Hadvarim, and Eila, the Gemara tells us, as we discussed yesterday. Okay, the second part of what we learned is Chochma Binah. So now we have a Chochma Techaya Ba'aleha. So here you have an interesting two sides to it. On one hand, Binah is called Ba'aleha, the owner of Chochma, the master of Chochma. On the other hand, it's Chochma that's Mechaya, that energizes and vitalizes Binah. So how do you explain that? So he explained like this. Why is it the master? Because Binah has the power to take the Nakuda of Chochma, which is just a spark, it's just an idea. In it is concealed and concentrated everything that will come from it, like we learned before about the letters of the Torah. But you need to draw out of it. So Binah has the power of revealing the expansiveness that's in the root and source of Chochma itself. So in other words, everything began, as I explained yesterday, the example of a reservoir. In intelligence, things begin in the koyach hasechel ha'atzmut, he called nekuda hasichlus k'moshi klula ba'atzmus koyach hasechel. The way it's encompassed in the source, not the way it's now come into an idea that has fallen to your head. Hisham b'tachlis harchava bli tzimtzum. That's an expansiveness without any diminishment. Not a mitzias, he says. It's not an existing entity because it's amorphous. It's really a form of what we call koyach hamaskil or chochma stima, however you describe it. But it's also, and there's no tzimtzum there, meaning it's not been diminished, like it's not a nakuda. Then from there comes the nakudas, the points of chochma, which is a nakuda, and Binah, through the effort of Binah, like you said, and from there, Binah comes because you could argue once it came into that tzimtzum and you only have a drop, how do you know you can expand that? The answer is because Binah accesses the root of Chochma, where the expansiveness, where it all began, and then allows us to expand. And I explained, like in teaching, you must have Chochma, because you could argue, why not just jump from the harchava, the expansiveness in the root of Chochma, to Binah? Because you need the drops. Like the water has to be absorbed by the ground. The student has to absorb the idea. You can't begin by teaching a student 100 pages of expansive ideas without first telling them, here's the point, here's a verse that we're going to discuss, a Mishnah, it's brief, one Nakuda, and then we're going to expand on it and flesh it out. But the expansion is coming, and that's why it's called, like he said, that's why it's called Ba'aleha. He says, well, Kei Nikra Bina, I'm reading in the bottom of page 1383. It's like a master that's being mashpia into Chochma. L'archiva, to expand it, ulegal is kol hanelam banakuda. Everything that's concealed there. So, I mean, I've given the example, just another example to illustrate the point. When you have, let's say, in a company, very often the two heads of the company, one is more of a visionary, comes up with ideas, conceiver. The other is far more of an executor, meaning he executes, implements. One is like more Chochma, one is Binah. Now, Chochma has the power, it conceives of an idea. But very many people who conceive ideas of ideas are not good at fleshing it out. They can give you the idea, but then there are people who are experts. They take an idea, they're not good at conceiving the idea necessarily, but give them an idea and they'll brilliantly break it down into details and divide division of labor, who's going to do what, and hire the right people. They know how to implement, they know how to make it a reality. So where does that come from? They're not conceiving a new idea. That's coming from Chochma, as we'll soon learn more details about that. But they have a power to expand it. And that power is coming essentially because their Binah has its own root. The root, I should rather rephrase. Binah is able to access, and there's a brilliance in that, the expansiveness that lies hidden in the Nakuda that others could not do. And you'll see this often. People understand, who may get the idea, but they're not able to really expand. And then those that know how to expand are able to access something deeper. That's just an example. Last line on the page. I'm just going over what we learned. Which means the power of the root and source of Chochma, from where the root of Chochma, before it became a Nakuda, before it became a point, a concentrated point, he bebchinas hisrachvus. He bebchinas hisrachvus, he nekeach zeh hu bebchinas habina dafke. The next page. That keach is in Binah. So in other words, from the root of intelligence, there are two aspects. There's an expansiveness there, and then the Nakuda comes from there. So like I said, let's use the example of the reservoir. It's a full body of a very large body of water, but then you want it to trickle into drops, but that doesn't mean the body of water disappears. Binah is the manifestation of that expansion. Once you have the Nakuda, Binah comes now and expands the Nakuda. So it's like, in a way, it's like almost, if you wish, like the Nakuda, then, which goes into a Tzimtzum, and then you expand upon it. The Yud and the Hey, which is also Chochma and Binah. But now comes the other side of it. Even though we call Binah Ba'aleha, the master, the Baal of Chochma, but who's energizing it? Where is it coming from? So that's why now comes the other side where he says Chochma Mechaya, Techaya Ba'aleha. So I'm going to read from the top, even though we read it yesterday, I'll just read again. So here comes the other side of the pasuk. U'makol mokem, top of page 1384. Why? Because Binah doesn't have this on its own. He's going to explain in several ways. It vitalizes, energizes Binah. The expansion and explanation of Binah is not a separate entity. It's not like a second track. It's coming, the Nakuda is being expanded upon. If Binah starts developing a different idea that Chochma didn't have, then it's not what we want. That's also not even aligned with the integrity and the authenticity of the idea. It would be like the Gemara explaining a Mishnah, but not the Mishnah. It's explaining its own ideas. It's like students hearing something from the teacher, and instead of trying to understand what the teacher said, they went off on a tangent, and they're analyzing a different idea. That's not what we're talking about here. The mechayas of Binah has to come from Chochma. Binah is expanding, and that's why it's called Ba'alel. But what is it expanding upon on the Nekudas HaChochma? V'hainu, This means, shakol nimtza behelam the chochma. Everything was encompassed already in the kud of chochma behelam, concealed. Ukanal, ukaniska leil, ukadizbar leil, like we discussed earlier, kamoy hasefer, like an author, a scribe, hakesav es hasefer, that authored the book, the book, gonaz vihilim hakol ba'esius. He had the wisdom that he concealed and he hid and concealed all the chochma in the letters. Most people can't see it, but it's all there. So when we come, Teresh B'Peh comes to elaborate upon and enumerate on Teresh B'Ksav, it's not because Teresh B'Ksav doesn't have it; it's just concealed. So the sages have that power to be able to access it in its root, and therefore they can reveal which is concealed. But it's not that it's not there. So it's all there in the Nekudah of Chochma, in these letters. Kamoi Kain, so just like we spoke about the author and the letters, from the root of intelligence, where everything was expansive, came everything in a Mekhelim ben Nekudah Zu, in this one drop. So this drop is like a concentrated drop that has within it all that's needed. All the three, everything has length, breadth, and depth, length, and breadth. There are three different aspects of how a seichel is stretched in different directions. So the depth, of course, is the qualitative depth. The erech is how far this idea can, as you extend it, and the rasachvus is expanding it, connecting it to other ideas, and so on. So all of that is included in the nekudah of this seichel. So therefore, that's why Binah shemegala rak mashanel b'chinas ha'chochma. And Binah is being megala only that which is concealed within Chochma. Is this breaking up, by the way, the transmission, or it's going all right?
It's going all right.
Good. It's breaking up a little bit. We can hear you. We can understand.
I just want to make sure. I'm just trying to monitor and see if this. I'm trying to get this internet smooth again. Okay. So there you have both sides of the coin. Binah's contribution is actually revealing and expanding, but to say Binah is doing this completely on its own, no, it's coming. It's chayis, it's vitality. It's being energized from Chochma because everything is coming from the Nekudah. But on the other hand, Binah is Ba'aleh because Binah masters it and is able to spell it out and flesh it out. So that's where we reached yesterday. Let's continue reading now. It's going to go further now. Explain this even more in depth, or more details of how Binah and Chochma work together. And that will then bring us back to the Gemara and Mishnah and so on. Any questions?
Still didn't explain why it's Ba'aleho.
He just explained the whole arichis on the bottom of the page, why it's Ba'aleho. He said, let's read inside. He says, because Kamosh Mashpas, Bechinas Hanakuda, the Chochma L'archiva, or Legalis, Kola Helam, Hanelam Banakuda. I gave several examples for it. The example of the person who takes and fleshes it out, that is called that's what he calls Ba'aleho. That's called the master. That's called like the owner, because he's taking the Nakuda, and that's what he says explicitly.
But the Chochma is the Baal of the Binah. He's the one.
That's what you're saying. The pasuk says it otherwise. Chochma is the chayis of the Binah, and the Baal is the Binah because it is expanding on it. That's how he interprets Ba'aleh.
But I'm asking you, Baal means the Chochma is giving the material to
So
Binah.
he says that means mechayet. That's techayeh Ba'aleh. The pasuk says v'chochma techayeh Ba'aleha. Let's start with that. Chochma vitalizes, energizes its master, its owner. So why would you call Binah Ba'aleh? So he answers because Binah is the one, like he says, Ba'aleh, mashpas. What's a Baal do? When you say someone masters something, let's say someone's a Talmud Chacham, you call a Baal Bar Seichel, a Baal Havana, whatever you want to say, a Baal. So he's not the owner, he's not the originator of the idea. The originator is Chochma. But he's mastered it because he has expanded on it, so he really understands it well. So one person can have the Nakudah, but he's not a Baal. He just has the Nakudah. He doesn't really know it well because he doesn't know all the details that are included and hidden in it. So Baal means here an owner. The owner of Chochma is Binah, because Binah has that capacity to understand the real details of Chochma. But where is it coming from? The power to do that. At the end of the day, Binah is a master of Chochma, not Chochma is a master of Binah. Binah is a master of understanding the Chochma to the full, with all the details. But what is it understanding? It's understanding Chochma. So it's Chochma that is actually energizing it all, because it all starts with the Nakudah. But Binah has mastered the understanding of the Nakudah. That's how I would explain. So, for example, when a person reads a book, so like I said yesterday, art, when you read it, initially, someone who doesn't know all the depth will read the words and tell the story. Fine. It's like someone reading Torah Shebiksav, and they would have just pshat. Then suddenly you have a Talmud Chacham. When he reads Torah Shebiksav, he sees in it a whole deeper narrative. He sees the Binah, the expansiveness within that Chacham. So he's like a Baal. You can call him a master of Torah. He actually said the word earlier, I think. We say that, what was the expression he used? They're a master of Torah, of Chochma. But on the other hand, what is he mastering? And what's driving him? It's all in the Nekudah Sahelim of Chochma. It's all there. He's, however, able to master it and draw it out. Okay. So the first point is that Chochma is the Nekudah, or everything that will be expanded upon originates in this Nekudah. It's literally like a seed. You plant the seed in the ground, the seed has everything it needs. You need to water it, you need to cultivate it. But the seed will grow into an apple tree or another type of tree. Everything is concentrated, but if it stays a seed, you'll never have a tree. So that all originates in the seed. So now he's going to go further and say one more thing. Because we still have not addressed where we get the power to expand upon it. So he's going to say that that power also comes through Chochma. So this is going to get a little more intricate. Remember, higher than Chochma Gluya, the revealed Nekudah, is the Harchava, what he called the expansiveness in the superconscious state. It then came into a conscious Nekudah, a concentrated point. Binah develops it. So now he's going to say like this. Also, this power to expand on the point, on the short concentrated point, and to reveal that which is concealed within it, so that's not like outside of Chochma. That also is encompassed in Chochma. In other words, not only is the Chochma Gluya is providing the very material, the idea, the concept that was conceived in Chochma for Binah to flesh out, but also that power was also encompassed within Chochma. And that is the idea, Hu Inyan Havein B'Chochma. Remember, you may remember at the end of volume 2, he spoke this a Sefer Yetzirah. It says Havein B'Chochma V'Chacham B'Bina. In other words, there's Bina within Chochma, and Chochma within Bina. So he's saying this is the level of Bina within Chochma. Havein B'Chochma, the level that this power to expand is also kolul. Now, what means kolul? Obviously, it's not expanded in Chochma, because if it was, you don't need Binah. It's only a spark. It's only a Nekudah. But it also has the power, the Binah within Chochma, to be expanded. He's going to explain what that means. But this is only strengthening the point why it's Chochma Techaya Ba'aleha. So though Binah is the place where you actually expand, but Chochma gives it the power to do so. So in addition to Chochma giving it the Nekuda, the idea, what to expand upon, it's also giving it the power to do the very expansion. So let's see how he explains that. The power of intelligence, so seichel, just like it has the power to conceive of ideas, aden shir, without any limit, meaning you can conceive and conceive, there's no quota. Kach yesh b'keiche, seichel, intelligence, the way God created us, also has the power, larchivam aden shir, to expand them without limit. In other words, it's not just the power to conceive of short, concise ideas, but seichel also has the power to expand them. Balkain, yesh ba nekuda gam koyach zeh. So therefore, when seichel first manifests from the superconscious to the conscious, so it doesn't manifest like two tracks. One is going to go into Chochma, one going to Binah. In Chochma, which is the nekuda, everything from the reservoir of the superconscious is coming into Chochma. Alkein yesh ba nekuda gam koyach zeh laharchiv es seichel. Also, this power to expand seichel. In other words, Chochma is the beginning of all seichel. Is the beginning in context of like the idea, but it's also giving the power to expand upon the idea. And that's the meaning when we say that because what does it mean havein b'chochma? Why can't you just say there's keser, superconscious, chochma stima, then comes a nekuda called chochma, a drop, and then comes a recheves hanor, the expansion of the river of Binah. It's true that Binah is taking from Chochma and expanding on it, but who says that there's a Binah within Chochma? But he's saying no, it's even more, the Achdus, the unification is even deeper, because even the expansion of Binah, the power of it is also traveling through Chochma. That's essentially what he's saying now. So obviously in the Nimshal of Teresh B'Ksav, Teresh B'Al Peh, this is going to be very important, because you're saying that even when the Gemara will expand on the Mishnah and on the Pasuk, it's not a separate track. It's a power to expand and reveal, but that too is being given from the power coming from Chochma. It's something like, if I may say, the Rebbe explains, we say Rosh Hashanah is the head of the year, like Chochma, the head, like Bereshis, the Chuchmasa. So we know the head of the year has two things to it. On one hand, it's the head, the central nervous system, it's where everything originates, but it's also a day in the year. It's not just, so everything comes through Rosh Hashanah. Also, that which comes in the days of the year is also encompassed in the Reish. So the fact, in other words, that the Chochma is not just a Nakuda that will later be expanded, but it has everything in it, including all the days of the year, an example I'm giving with Rosh Hashanah, even though those days have not yet come out begoli because we didn't live the year yet, but in the Reish you have kolul, everything. Okay. So lachivam aden v'zeu shachochma machaya es habina, and that's the meaning chochma techaya ba'aleh. The chochma is machaya. Now machaya is a word that can mean many things. It can mean energize, vitalize. But here he's talking about mechaya, meaning it's giving its power. It's empowering Binah. Because everything comes in Binah from the Kudus HaChochma. Both the concept and also the power to expand. So in a way, I'm going back to the seed. The seed that you plant in the ground obviously has all the properties, if it's an apple tree, of an apple tree. But it's all concentrated. But it also has another power. It is a power to expand. The seed, the expansion doesn't come from another force. It's not like you have to inject some type of enzyme or some steroid into the seed to make it expand. It will naturally expand as long as you water it, you take care of it. Because the seed has the power to expand. Or when you say a newborn child, or even a child at conception, expansion is not coming through other machines or through other forces. It's the natural process. So it's all included, not just all the features of the child are included in the seed, but also the expansion of the seed is included in the seed. It's essentially what he's saying here. Here's the qualification. So then what do you need Binah? Because in the Nekudas HaChochma, Kol Zeh Behela. It's all concealed. End of the day, it's still not revealed. It's just all concentrated there, and all the power is there. And what is revealed in Chochma? Only a drop, only a nekuda, a point, that it's utterly brief and simsum and diminished. It's a yud, it's a dot. The ima yeshu b'chinas gili eir. And even though, like we learned, it's a gili eir, it's not super conscious, it's not concealed in the ayin. You have an active idea. There is the manifestation of Chochma here. And not only that, remember we learned that it has a tremendous clarity. It's an eir mavurer. It's a clear and pure light. But it's still in a concentrated form. It's diminished. Diminished meaning it's only a yud, only a kuda. And what's concealed in it is not obvious and revealed at all. Well, but b'chinas Binah, that's where Binah comes in. In the level of Binah, b'chinas gilei seichel. I'm sorry, who b'chinas gilei shekol inyan habina. Yeah, because the whole role of Binah, hilagalis es hanelam ba'nakuda, is to reveal that which is concealed in this point. However, that alone comes from Chochma. The power that the Binah within Chochma, that's the personality of Binah, that when Binah emerges, it's emerging with that power of the Binah within Chochma that's becoming the Binah that actually reveals and expands it all. So now comes the other side of it. If it's coming all from Chochma, so what does Binah have? So he says, so it's traveling through Chochma. Chochma has that havein b'Chochma, that power to, but it's not actualized. Binah is receiving it through Chochma, but by receiving it, it's really because it's drawing down from the expansion that preceded the Nekuda in the first place. Prior to becoming a Nekuda. So what you have is, there's where it's all standing within the ayin of Keser. There it's an expansive, but it's not at all revealed, because there nothing is revealed. Chochma is the beginning of revelation, but it's a Nekuda, but that Nekuda has concentrated everything in it. Both the idea and all its details, and also the power to expand it. So when you combine those two, Binah then, which is drawing from Chochma, is drawing that power to expand, and then revealing the expansiveness that preceded the Nekuda, that was then concentrated in the Nekuda. So in the world of Binah, basically is the Gilui of the Hisrachvus of Lifnei Chochma and the Ayin of Keser, and that which is concealed in the Nekuda of Chochma. Binah reveals it all. That's what he's saying here. And that's why the Mahus of Binah is not like the Mahus of Chochma. Remember, Chochma is a concentrated point. Binah is expansion. So where did that come from? So it travels through Chochma, but the very expansion, he says, and that's why its personality is in a state of Harchova, Vizgalus Dafka, and that's why it has the power to do something that Chochma itself, even though Chochma gives it the power, but Chochma itself doesn't reveal that power. So Binah, so it's a back and forth thing that needs really to go back and forth to understand all the components here. So the ingredients of Binah originate from before Chochma, higher from the root of Chochma, but it comes through Chochma, and then you have the best of both worlds. You have the Gilui, you have the Archava, you have the Nekuda, and then you have the expansion of it. Now I have to I have to end the class early today because I have something urgent that I have to do. I'll take a question or two if you have one, or we can wait till tomorrow and then I'll go over this, and there's more to learn on this topic, obviously. But that's what he says here. Anybody want to clarify anything? I mean, the Nimtza, he's going to say more on this topic. Okay, but we have to learn this tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to